Did Adam and Eve really die on the same day they ate from the forbidden fruit? If so, why does the Bible say that Adam lived 930 years? What few realize is that their death hides a profound mystery, and the answer to this question can completely change the way you understand God's plan for humanity. Today, we'll reveal what truly happened to Adam and Eve after the fall, how and when they died, and most importantly, what it means for all of us. Get ready, because this truth will challenge everything you've ever heard about this crucial moment in biblical history. Immediately after their disobedience in the Garden of Eden, Adam and Eve faced both the immediate and eternal consequences of their choice. Their expulsion from Eden wasn't just a change of location. It was a rupture in their direct communion with God. They were no longer in the place of perfection, where they once walked with the Creator. Now, pain, sweat, and death became part of their new reality. God, in his justice, did not spare them from the consequences. For Eve, judgment came in the form of pain during childbirth and a relationship marked by tension with her husband. For Adam, the once fertile ground was now cursed. His work would become difficult, marked by exhaustion and struggle. For dust you are, and to dust you will return, says Genesis chapter, verse 19. But even in the midst of judgment, God offered a promise. In Genesis chapter 3, verse 15, we see the first messianic prophecy: the woman's offspring would crush the serpent's head. This promise was a light in the darkness, pointing to the coming of Jesus, the Redeemer. From that moment on, Adam and Eve lived in a completely different world, outside of Eden, filled with pain, suffering, and spiritual distance. The birth of their sons marked a new chapter, but not without tragedy. The story of Cain and Abel brings the first recorded human death in the Bible. The murder of Abel by Cain reflects the corruption of the human heart. Cain, upon seeing that his offering did not please God, instead of repenting, gave in to jealousy and killed his brother. Abel's death symbolizes not only the end of a righteous man's life, but also a visible rupture in the spiritual connection between man and God. Humanity was now marked by violence and sin. Yet God did not abandon even Cain. He placed a mark on him so that no one would kill him. Even in the midst of sin, God's mercy was revealed. And for Adam and Eve, Abel's death was a terrible reminder of sin's consequences. The pain of losing one son to the other is one of the most heartbreaking moments in the narrative. But hope did not die with Abel. In Genesis chapter 4, verse 25, we read that Adam and Eve had another son, Seth. And Eve said, "God has granted me another child in place of Abel, since Cain killed him." The redemptive lineage continued. Adam's physical death is recorded in Genesis chapter verse 5. Altogether, Adam lived a total of 930 years, and then he died. But wait, hadn't God said that on the day they ate from the forbidden fruit, they would die? Then how did Adam live for 9 more centuries? The key to understanding this lies in the concept of spiritual death. When Adam and Eve ate the fruit, they did die spiritually. They were separated from God. Their spirit, once in communion with the Creator, was now disconnected. That is the true death God was referring to. Physical death would come later, but the spiritual death was immediate, and this spiritual death was passed on to all mankind. Romans chapter verse 12 says, "Therefore, just as sin entered the world through one man, and death through sin, and in this way death came to all people, because all sinned." Adam's death, therefore, is not just biological. It is a milestone in the separation between man and God. During his 930 years of life, Adam saw his generations grow, saw the world change, saw sin spread. But he also witnessed the first steps toward redemption. He lived long enough to feel the impact of his disobedience, but also to nourish the hope of God's promise. Jesus is called the second Adam. If the first brought death, the second brought life. In 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verse 22, Paul writes, "For as in Adam all die, so in Christ all will be made alive." The fall of the first man opened the door to the redemption brought by the second. Adam's death, then, plays a fundamental role in God's plan. It wasn't a mistake, it was a starting point, a living illustration of what sin causes, but also an introduction to the great plan of humanity's rescue. In John chapter 11, verse 25, Jesus said, "I am the resurrection and the life. The one who believes in me will live, even though they die." That is the promise that changes everything. Adam's death marked the beginning of the fall. Christ's death marked the beginning of restoration. The story of Adam and Eve teaches us the gravity of sin, but also the depth of God's grace. Even in failure, even in the fall, God provided a way. The first death served as a warning, but also as a promise. Death will be defeated. Today, as we reflect on Adam and Eve, we are called to recognize our own condition. We too have sinned. We too have wandered. But in Christ, we have the chance to return, to be restored. Their story echoes in ours. Physical death is inevitable, but spiritual death doesn't have to be our destiny. In Christ, we have life, and life in abundance. The choice Adam and Eve made brought death into the world, but Jesus' choice to obey the Father, even to death, on a cross, brought salvation. So the death of Adam and Eve was not the end. It was only the beginning of a story that would culminate on the cross. That would culminate in the resurrection. That culminates in you and me today, able to choose between life and death. Choose life. If this story touched you in any way, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who needs to hear this message. And don't forget to watch the next video where we continue to explore the mysteries and truths of the Bible in a clear, deep, and inspiring way. May God bless your life, and see you in the next video.